Good evening, or if it's another time of the day to someone, then good time of the day. My name is Valeriy, and I work for Dropsolid. And we're going to talk about why we want to test things, when we should do it, because there are really situations when we should not, and what exactly we want to test, keeping in mind that we already have so many automated tests coming from components that we use in our products, like Drupal core and contributed models. We all know that they contain thousands, sometimes dozens of thousands automated tests. So is it enough for our purposes, and should we write unit tests, or we should write some other types of tests? Let's discuss these things. But before that, a couple of words about me. As I said, my name is Valeriy. You can find me virtually everywhere by nick Valdebold. I'm in Drupal.org, Facebook, Skype, Twitter, and whatsoever. In Drupal community, I have two roles. One role is I'm core mentoring coordinator. It means that we help new people start contributing to Drupal core. That happens mainly on major Drupal events like DrupalCons and DrupalCamps, but more and more, especially after coronavirus has hit us hard, these efforts happen also online. So you can join Drupal Slack and find either contribute channel or go to mentoring channel, and there you can find mentors that can help you start contributing to Drupal core. So today we'll speak about the following things. Why do we care about quality? And by we, I mean mainly developers, people who build websites, who build solutions based on Drupal. What factors can affect the quality? Should we do anything except writing and executing tests? How frequently we should execute tests? What test types fit different types of projects, because we know that some of us work on a Drupal core, maybe someone maintains contributed models and themes on Drupal.org, but I suppose that majority is working on client projects that bring money to the companies that you're working for. And last but not least, is it possible to find the right balance and to have quality product and not empty the budget only by writing tests? Because that's all. Psychological factor is that if there is a dedicated budget for writing automated tests, you all know that it gets cuts at the first place. When we go to the end of the project and everyone understands that we do not have enough time to implement all the new features and shiny theme and Ajax effects and you know what, the first thing that is get cut is the budget to write automated tests, so that we have proper covering of all the features that we have, and we ensure that the bugs that we encounter do not return. Unfortunately, that happens, as I said, and let's see if we can do anything to prevent that. Can we convince stakeholders and project owners that quality is not necessarily the bad thing? I mean, we all understand that quality and having the good product that doesn't have bugs is a good thing, but it's not necessarily should cost a fortune. So why we all care about having the tests? The issue here is not the tests themselves. What we care about is the quality of things that we do. And it doesn't matter what exactly we are doing, either we are writing code, we are doing the design. Inside our internal perfect finder always wants to be proud about the things that we are doing. Um, it's very personal thing, but it can be also measured because pride is something internal and it affects only you. But when we are talking about long term and about working in a company, then we have a factor of reputation. If you're building your career, then reputation is the only thing that you can carry through the whole career, and you can change companies, you can add some money to your bank account. But if you don't have things that you are proud of, or you have done some bad things and people know that, then you have bad reputation and it's really hard to fix that. The same is correct not only about people, but also about companies. So if some company or company slash agency is doing products, is doing projects that have bad quality, then the world is really small, and very really fast potential clients of this agency start to refuse to sign new deals with the company because they know that they will not get good projects in the end. So it's not only about having some good feelings about what you do by yourself. It's also affecting the reputation of your company and your reputation as an employee in the future. Uh, as I started to say, uh, poor quality projects have their price, have their additional costs. So when we are talking about cutting budgets for automated testing and testing in general, we all mean that having a good quality product means additional costs, and that's true. We need to spend additional time writing the tests. We need to spend additional time setting testing infrastructure, because I have worked on several projects, not on my current company, but in previous companies, that there are several projects that we used to have tests, but they were not run on a regular basis. That means that we have a set of tests. It can be quite a good or decent coverage of project functionality, but they are not executed on every site build or every week or even every month. Instead, the person who is responsible for writing tests or QA department, they just add the same or similar tests that they have in their base to every project they are working on. But then, since there is no regular execution of this test, we cannot be sure that these tests always pass. And in fact, every time that we try to run this set of tests, they fail. So it's really important not only to have tests, but also to execute them on a regular basis. And we will discuss later what should be the schedule for different types of tests. So having good quality project has its cost, but also costs of having a poor quality project also has its costs. And one, we need for having customer support. We need to spend, or the company that maintains the project needs to spend money to fix bugs. Every bug should be tested again, can be manually without automated tests, but it doesn't matter. We still need to test every bug. And again, last but not least, that has a brand impact, which is hard to measure, but it's possible to measure. So let's talk about that, how we can measure the quality of our code and the quality of our solutions. There are several known metrics for measuring software quality. First, which is quite rarely used for a Drupal-based project, is mean time to failure. And that basically means when was the last time that we have a complete crash of all of our systems. Since we mostly build websites, and it doesn't happen very often, and the function on a website is not crucial in most cases, then this metric is rarely used for Drupal sites and websites in general. What is more important for websites is build stability. So if we have a set of tests that run on every build, is what is the percentage of last X builds that passed, and what's the percentage of builds that failed. Next KPI is defect density, and that basically means if we have 100K lines of code, how many issues, known issues we have per 100 lines of code. And customer complaints, the thing that also can be measured. It's usually named in PUM, means problems per user month. So we actually can measure all these KPIs in different conditions. In conditions that we have certain coverage of automated tests, and in under condition that we don't have any automated tests, and all quality assurance that we perform is only acceptance testing by the team, and maybe then by the client. So what are KPIs here, and what we can measure to understand if our tests are really working? And here it doesn't matter what type of test do we have. Meaning, in different projects, we can try different approaches and see what is the cost of each approach, and then compare what is the effectiveness of each approach. So first parameter to see if our automated tests are working is defect density detected by automated tests. And that is related to phase-based defect removal. So let's say we have a new feature and it has some bugs. We don't know how many. And then we run our automated tests if we have them, and we have a certain percentage of issues found by automated tests. So we have this defect density. Then if a feature request is merged to main branch and deployed to staging environment or even to live environment, then it is tested in the field conditions by either end users or the client. So we have the next phase, and we have the next number of bugs that are found either by client or by the end users. So we have a different number. And by comparing defect density detected by automated tests with defect density that was actually passed and were discovered only on live or staging, we can see how good is our test set, how effective it is, and is it worth making it wider. Next parameter that can be checked and measured is BMI. And that basically means how fast we as a team manage to close opening bugs. And basically, it's a ratio of number of bugs that was solved during a certain period. Can be sprint, can be month, can be half a year, depends on the project, divided by the numbers of new bugs. So if this index is more than 1, then everything is good, and we manage to keep up the pace, and we manage to close more bugs that they're open, and that's a good condition. If there are more open bugs than we manage to close, then something is wrong and we need to fix it. And of course, there is a parameter of fixed response time, which affects customer satisfaction. And it basically means how fast we manage to to react to the new issues and to fix them and to deploy them to production. So, as I said in the beginning, when we're talking about testing, we actually talking about quality. And these are slightly different things because there are things that do not require test infrastructure. They do not require any test runners like BEHAT or Selenium, or they don't require any CI or CD infrastructure. So they can be performed right in your IDE. How we can ensure code quality even without writing tests or before writing any tests? First thing is static analysis. For those of you who don't know, static analysis means just analyzing the source code without executing it, without checking it on real conditions, or even deploying it anywhere. And since this is just an analysis of a source code, it can be performed right in your tool of your choice. I think these days, PHP Storm can be named de facto standard for everyone who deals with PHP development professionally. It's not an advertisement, but the license is about €90 a year. So I think if you earn money from software development in PHP, then you probably can afford this tool as well. So what types of quality issues can we avoid by using static analysis? First is, of course, syntax errors. That's pretty clear. Most modern IDEs support that and can fix that automatically. Second is overcomplicated expressions. So the most important KPI here for overcomplicated expressions and the complexity of the code is complexity. And it basically means how many possible execution paths there are in your function or class method. So the more if-else statements you have, the higher is the chance that one of these execution flows will fail, and in the end it will be harder to cover all these possible execution paths to test all these execution paths. As I mentioned, the de facto standard for professional development with PHP is PHP Storm. And there are two static analysis tools that quite easily can be configured and used and can avoid a lot of problems. First tool is Code Sniffer. But when we're talking about code quality and avoiding unnecessary complexity and things like that, it's more mess detector. So the project is named PHP-MD. It can be easily installed using Composer. Configuration in PHP Storm takes exactly two screens. One screen where you enable PHP Code Sniffer and Mess Detector, either globally or for the current project. And the second screen is where you can set the path to PHP Mess Detector path executable. So in this case, you can see that PHPMD is located in vendor/bin/PHPMD folder. And that means that it was installed using Composer for the project name contrib9. Now we have talked a little bit what we can do before tests. Now let's talk what type of tests there are, because you can really lose yourself trying to understand what types of tests you need for a project. I have listed only most frequently used, but there are much more flavors of test types. So first test type, which is widely used in Drupal core, is unit tests. And unit tests is a low-level test that tests that a single function or methods functions correctly. And so if we have several execution paths, then we should cover every execution path with a separate test or test parts. Next type is integration. It means that you have different models, and integration tests test how they work together. That's kind of intermediary type of tests that is relatively rarely used. Functional tests and smoke tests, I will combine them together because they're very similar. So functional tests, they come from business requirements. So if we are talking in terms of Jira or Redmine or any other issue tracker tools, they're basically user stories. So you have a user story, what should happen under what user roles, which screens you should see, and so on and so on. So functional test ensures that this user story is always working as expected originally. We will talk about that later. Smoke test is something similar, but it's something that should always work. So it's some quick sanity test that you should perform after every deploy of your new feature or bug fix or so on. It's things like after you deploy a website, user login should work. Or after you deploy your website, your news page should not be empty. So this is something that you can check really quickly, but it's also very critical for the system and for the customer satisfaction that this test pass. The last type of test here is performance, and this one is pretty clear. So it tests how the system performs under high load. It can be performed either on every deploy or on a periodic basis, because it happens relatively rarely that new features or bug fixes affect performance. But still, it's something that you should keep an eye on and take care. So I have marked functional tests for a very simple reason. As I said in the beginning, we all work on different types of projects. We can work on Drupal core, we can work on some contributed models or custom models that are used inside the company. But still, for what I know, most of the work that typical Drupal developer does is developing custom functionality in models or custom themes, or extending contributed themes, or writing decoupled code if you're talking about decoupled solutions, and so on and so on. So most of the time, we are not writing any functions that should be reused in other projects. So most of the time, we are writing the code that will be used in the project we are working on. And that's very important for the next part. So let's see, before that, we were talking about testing in general without focusing on what is our specialization. So our specialization is building web applications, websites, and in a very simple case, the interaction between user that goes to Drupal website or any other website is quite simple. So we have a user agent that sends a request to web server redirects it to Drupal, Drupal processes and returns the response, which is returned back to the client. Then, of course, the picture gets more complex. We have databases, we have third-party services. If we want to have decent performance, we introduce application cache. Then we have more and more web servers. We add CDN, we add load balancers, we add tons of other things that are out of our control. So, what exactly do you want to test when you have this complex setup? And most of this complex setup is out of your control. You cannot change it, and you cannot control what requests come from third-party services or what responses do they send to you. The answer is quite simple. We should test what we are responsible for. So if we have load balancer under our control, then we should test how it's working with if we have different web servers, if we have several web servers, and what happens if one of the web servers stops working. Is the load rebalanced to working servers and so on? If we are writing a web server, we should test it. If we're writing the application, we test the application. If we're writing the code to connect to third-party services, then we should test them. Again, we have, in most cases, people who take care of load balancers and web service. They are probably in sysadmin or infrastructure or IT or whatever you call this department. And I'm mainly talking here about people who are in software development department, who are writing and testing their own code. So we are focusing on the application level. And since most of us work with application called Drupal, let's look further on the what types of projects we have when we're working on Drupal sites. So if you're a lucky person and you get salary from the office of Dries in the United States, then probably you get money from to write core, and then you probably should focus on the unit testing because you add new methods, you fix bugs in existing methods and functions and so on. Of course, even if you're not getting money for contributing to Drupal core and you're working on it and you have energy and enthusiasm to work on Drupal core, you should be interested in writing unit tests. No new feature can find its way into Drupal core without having proper testing. So this is just a law, and no patch is committed without related test. Rules in contributed space are similar, but they're not that strict. Everything depends on energy and resources that maintainer of each contrib model has. If we're talking about popular and well-maintained contrib models, most of them have good unit tests. And of course, since they cannot work alone, they require at least Drupal core to function properly. They sometimes require also integration tests. And finally, when we get to the client project, so our case, or at least my case, I don't know what's your situation, the focus area is functional testing, and that basically is well related to what is required and what by the client and what the client cares about. I have done once this chart to see what part of the project is actually the code that we develop in a team. So that's a typical project. I even took several client projects using Drupal. you can see that combined custom theme and custom models that we were developing, they encounter for less than 2% of the whole size of the projects. And given the huge number of unit tests that we see in Drupal core, we can be pretty sure that every function and every model is working properly when we're talking about Drupal core. So the problems begin when we start to combine them with our custom code or with some untested third-party models, or when we try to connect to third-party services, then the interesting things began. So we should really focus on that. So when talking about functional testing, there are not that many frameworks that support are focused on functional testing. Of course, you can build functional tests with PHP unit, the tool that is used for unit tests inside Drupal core. In that case, every test is a separate PHP class, and you just write all the logic that you think is appropriate for every functional test in this class. This tool is specific for PHP, as the name applies. A second tool that was promoted some time ago by Drupal core developers is Nightwatch.js. That's basically a test runner for running and for writing and running JavaScript tests. You can use this tool for black box testing your Drupal application because it's basically explaining your testing logic in JavaScript. So you say, go to this page, press this button, then check that this button is of red color, then go to this page, and on that page, you should expect that the button would be blue. Something like that. And once again, you write the tests, and the tests are written in JavaScript in this case. I would put Selenium at that point aside because it's not a testing tool itself. It's just a framework for running commands for managing real browsers. So in original setup, you can download Selenium, you can launch your Chrome or Firefox browser, and then you execute whatever tests you have that can manage your real browsers, in this case, Firefox or Chrome. In the latest years, Selenium has managed to not only command real browsers that have a graphic user interface and execute only on a graphical operating system. So it was quite an expensive setup to launch because if you launch this type of setup in cloud, then you need to install some graphic operating system, and that requires a lot of resources. So luckily, Selenium can run not only real Chrome and Firefox, but also their headless versions. Both Chrome and Firefox can run without having any graphic user interface. And at the same time, they can execute JavaScript, they can react to mouse movements, they can save screenshots, and so on and so on. So this feature is very powerful. In the early days of Selenium and other browser-oriented tests, the most popular browser was Phantom, but after Chrome has got its headless version, development of Phantom.js has practically stopped, and I think there was no new version for the last 3 years or so. The last tool in the list is BEHAT, and I think it's the most fitting tool for functional testing when we are talking about testing PHP applications, including Drupal. But before talking about BEHAT, let's talk briefly about what client cares about. So it cares about website working fast. They care about end user experience. So what happens when you visit this specific page? What happens when you click on this button? And what's important, client can they can say their requirements. I mean, good clients, not the clients that can I just want everything to work. But good clients know what they want. So they can tell, if I go to this page, I should see this, this, and this. And if I click this button, this should happen. So let's talk about good clients that know what they want. So they care about end user experience. They care about site builder experience. So they want to have not only front end, which is shiny, fast, and beautiful, but they also want that editors have that editors have decent performance for their editing tasks. So it's very important to note that none of this list requires knowledge of any programming language. So when client describes us what we need to do in these terms, I want to go to this page and see this, this, and this, we do not require from the client knowledge of JavaScript or PHP. We just accept their requirements, we put it in a description field of Jira or Redmine or whatever, and we start the work. And then in the end, we show the client our work, and they go exactly by the original description, and they check whether the site is working as they expect or not. So how this check is handled by BEHAT tests. So the difference between BEHAT tests and PHP unit or Nightwatch or other types of tests is that it's written in Gherkin. So the word Gherkin comes from the word cucumber, and that's the language for writing tests for Java. So many good things that we use in Gherkin came from Java. So HPM, younger brother of Java mess detection tool, but that was an off topic. So what is BEHAT and what are BEHAT scenarios? So BEHAT scenarios, they are written in Gherkin. They that are methods of PHP classes. There is some contradiction here, but I will explain on the next slide. And what's good for us is that Gherkin/BEHAT has a wide range of ready and reusable snippets and actions. So let's take some examples. So let's say we have talked about smoke tests. Very simple smoke tests is that editors can use administrative pages and anonymous users cannot, right? And we never want this check to fail. So this is a possible, can be possible description coming from the client or even written by the team lead or project owner or whoever opens this task. So we need to ensure that in all cases, site editor should have should see administrative pages and can edit nodes, and anonymous users should get access denied, right? So this can be a description in Jira ticket. Related BEHAT solution would be, and related BEHAT scenario would be to go to /admin as anonymous user and check that the application returns access denied. Then log in as site editor and check that application returns administration page. This is not similar. So this is exact example of how this can be implemented in BEHAT. So first line says JavaScript. It's an optional line telling, it's called tags, and it tells us in which cases this scenario should run. So this line can be omitted, but for me that means that this test should run in an environment that has real browser. So we should be able to log in, we should be able to perform certain actions with mouse and keyboard and so on. Then comes the feature name, check that the administrator has access to the content list, and then scenario. Given that I'm a user with administrator role and I visit page /admin/content, then I should see next page link, right? So this thing, so this is real BEHAT feature. And the second feature also having the same header, where scenario is given that I'm a user with anonymous role and I visit page /admin/content, then I should see access denied. So same syntax. So this is BEHAT features. So what happens behind the scenes? But before that, I think that all of you can agree with me that this thing is pretty powerful for a simple reason. You can show that to client. And if the client is really smart, they can write these things by themselves. Or they can write a description of issues very similar to that. So they can think these terms. So what are the given conditions? And then what are the actions and what is expected results, or what are expected results. So this is powerful. And even if original description cannot serve for different reasons as a final BEHAT feature, it would be much easier for developers to write real features if the original description follows the same logic. So let's take several real-life examples. So first one was a smoke test that we must ensure that that content editors have access to admin pages and then anonymous users have not. Now, what happens if we develop a new feature? I worked on several projects where this was a requirement. When there is a new user story, so there is a feature request, and then there is a branch with development feature. So the requirement was that if there is a new feature, then it should ship with a new BEHAT test. Quite logical, and that helps for this project that I'm talking about to fix a real-life issue. So let's say I'm a client and I want to add a WYSIWYG functionality to node editing. So this is a new feature. And this is my requirement. When I create a new node, I can use WYSIWYG editor. So BEHAT solution, log in as site editor, go to /node/add/page, and check that WYSIWYG editor is present. This is real life BEHAT feature. Given that I am a user with administrator role, I visit this page, I should see view source. I can click on this page, I can click on this button. Then I should see view text button, and I should not see view source button. Pretty simple. Now, we can follow the same logic when we have not only new features, but also bugs. So for example, we got a bug that news page is empty. So developer performs investigation, then finds out that the problem is in a new version of jQuery that requires additional parameter, which wasn't used in our code. Okay, so developer decides to downgrade jQuery, and that's the fix. So what we ask from developer is to submit a new feature that ensures that news page is always visible and we have news there. Very good. So we have a new feature after that bug request, after that bug fix. And the BEHAT solution is to go to /news and check that there is at least one news. Then in a couple of months, we got another bug. News page is empty again. We ensure, we know that this cannot be our previous failure. So it's not the issue with jQuery. And then developer starts to investigate it and sees that the web service that we use for consuming news has changed its parameters. And once again, we don't get any results. So we could have learned several lessons from here. So one lesson, it is good to have test coverage, and that would prevent us from making the same mistakes again. But also, if we run tests on a regular basis, we can ensure that different issues do not happen. For example, if in the previous scenario, we run this news test every day, we could have detected that problem really fast. Unfortunately, this didn't happen. Now, let's talk a little bit about how things work. I mean, how this magic of converting plain English phrases into PHP logic works. So in the core of BEHAT lies feature context or several feature context classes that know how to do things, and what they do, they provide us with, in some cases, really wide set of phrases. For example, this is again a real life example of feature context class. And what this feature context class defines several, and one is called iButton. So there is a logic. This function has annotation-based discovery, annotation-based exposure of its functionality. So after I have this feature context, I know that I can write in my BEHAT feature, I can write that given I push the blue button, something should happen. So when this happens, and when BEHAT sees this phrase that I push the blue button, it launches I push the button method and passes blue as a button argument. It's that simple. The power here is that BEHAT comes with a really wide range of phrases that are predefined. Like you go to that page, you press this button, you check this menu item, you scroll to the bottom, and so on and so on. And it's not only phrases that are about interaction with the web pages. There are also phrases that allow you to launch Drush commands or execute any bash scripts, run cron, and so on and so on. Yeah, I think I have used almost all of my time, so it's quite high time for questions. But to summarize what I was saying before, I think the most important type of tests that we should focus on is functional tests. The tool for writing functional tests for PHP applications and Drupal is BEHAT. And third, it can be budget effective to have test infrastructure, and you really can measure that, and you can convince your boss that tests should be part of the next project you should be working on. So here are some links that you can use. And if there are any questions, then I would be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Valeriy. And yes, actually, we have one question. Let me know if you see it in the chat.
No, I don't see it in Zoom chat.
Yeah, okay, so I probably just read it so you can answer. So Brandgis is asking, is there a way to get an overview of all the BEHAT phrases that are in your project exist by default?
First of all, hi Brent. And second, yes, but not an overview. So I don't know if there is a central repository of all phrases that you have, but in PHP Storm, I'm not sure, do you need a BEHAT extension for that, or it works out of the box? You can open a new file with .feature extension, and you can start typing the command, and you will have a drop down of available phrases. That works for sure.
Can I add my few points about that?
Sure.
Actually, you have the command in BEHAT which can list all possible phrases from all contexts registered for this particular project. I believe this command called dd or something like that, but it's easy to go to the BEHAT resource and find that command there. The command is present.
Yeah.
So you can list all, yeah. Sorry for interruption.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
That was very valuable.
Okay, if...
I have another question. It's Dima. Did you hear about this Drupal test traits, which somebody speaks that it can replace, or I think replace the BEHAT tests?
Yes, if you're talking about Mosh Weitzman traits.
Yeah.
Yes, they are similar to BEHAT in a way that they both test existing sites. So classic PHP unit works with empty sites every time. So every time you have a set of PHP unit tests, they create a new Drupal site, they perform some initialization, and then they test. Difference between this approach and BEHAT / test traits is that they always test existing application. So you write either in BEHAT YAML or in, I don't know, don't remember the name for traits, but it's also YAML or XML file where you say what is the URL for accessing your website. So there is no setup. In this regard, both test traits and BEHAT are similar. I'm not sure test trait can replace BEHAT because test traits, exactly as PHP unit, it uses PHP logic for expressing the test logic. It is good and it's easier for us as developers, but it makes harder for communication between developers and the client. But of course, if it's easier for you and you have experience with writing PHP unit, then definitely test traits is a good option.
Thank you. Okay. So I see the same. I have the same vision of that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dmitry and Valeriy. Valeriy, we have one more question from Alexander Cherny. He is asking what you can suggest for old project without a test. How we can start, from what point?
That's a very good question. So I would start with having several really critical smoke tests that define the functionality that should never break. This is usually not a big number of, can be 10 or tens of tests that ensure that things are really okay for the crucial parts of the application. And then if you maintain such an old project and make fixes or new features, you can follow the logic that I have mentioned earlier, and you work on some issue, Jira or Redmine issue or whatever tool you use. So you create a feature branch that fixes a bug or adds a new feature, and in the same feature branch, you add a test that ensures that this bug is not present anymore or this feature works as expected. And if you do that, then gradually you would make test coverage of your application better. And you can make sure that both critical parts of the application work as expected and your new features and bug fixes, they stay on their places.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.